Good morning, everybody. This is Man Coverage with Knoxville Nate and Rico McCoy, the coach. As you can see, the coach is not here. So we're just going to have Knoxville Nate for you today for the first 30 minutes, breaking down all the action of college football, week number 5. Rico and me were both yesterday at Central State University as his Allen University Yellow Jackets took on the Central State Marauders and came away victoriously. Unfortunately, the coach and the rest of the Allen University crew got broken down on their way out of town. And that is why we are missing the coach today. So thoughts and prayers go out to those fellas as they were just trying to get home. And I hope that everything is okay. But we're going to still go ahead and talk a little college football for the first 30 minutes. And at the 12:30 marker, we're going to have Bryant Browning, Ohio State 3-year starter, former captain, NFL player, and also now the host of the postgame show on Spectrum News 1. Is going to join us and talk to us a little bit about the Buckeyes' domination yesterday over the Rutgers Scarlet Knights, and also where the Buckeyes stand at this point following yesterday's game. So we're going to talk to him about that. Also going to touch on a little bit about the Big Ten and what all went on yesterday throughout the conference, as well as the rest of college football. So big day, lots of things to get to. Probably the first game that we want to start with and that we want to talk about is going to be, one of the upsets, or maybe not an upset, but one of the biggest games of the day. And it's an upset depending on who you talk to. Obviously, Cincinnati came into the game actually ranked ahead of Notre Dame, number 7, as where Notre Dame was ranked number 9. But I think there's some people that would argue with you and tell you that, Notre Dame was the better team, the more established team, and probably the favorite to win this game. But didn't happen that way. Pretty crazy. I mean, you got to give Coach Fickell some credit for what he's done while he's been at Cincinnati. This is a guy who, was essentially taken over as a first-time head coach after his stint at Ohio State, basically, being an interim coach essentially for a year and a co-head coach after Coach Tressel was relieved of his duties, or after he resigned actually and moved on. So this was his first, head coaching gig, and what a job he's doing for the Bearcats. I mean, they definitely do not hide away from a challenge. They came into this game believing that they can win, and that's a testament to the head coach. When a team believes they can win and a team comes into a game, just knowing that they have a chance to go ahead and win it, that falls on the coaching staff. And let's be honest, this was a pretty big time game with Brian Kelly being a former coach at Cincinnati, Marcus Freeman, the defensive coordinator at Notre Dame, used to be at Cincinnati. So a lot of ties and a lot of intermingling between these two coaching staffs and these two programs. And what a ball game it was. And we've got to give credit to Cincinnati. They covered, pretty much covered up this game and took over, the lead the entire time, and were pretty much dominant. I know the score wasn't really indicative of, in my opinion, how much the Bearcats were the better team this particular day. So, we got to give credit to not only the coaching staff at Cincinnati, but also the players who came out and got it done. So let's give credit where it's due. Desmond Ridder is a legitimate quarterback. This guy can throw it, he can run it, he can do pretty much anything that needs to be done to get his team to win. He's a winner. And I've kind of been a little bit hesitant on buying into the quarterback system that's been implemented by Notre Dame. I mean, obviously Jack Cohen was originally the starter. He's kind of gone in and out of the lineup due to injury, due to being replaced. And, Drew Pine has kind of become everybody's darling. had a pretty decent game yesterday. Jack Cohen came in and threw an interception. Kyron Williams never really got going. 13 carries, 45 yards, a long of 16. I mean, we're used to seeing a lot more out of him. Michael Mayer still dominating. He had 8 catches for 93 yards with a long of 20. So that guy's still getting it done. But just overall, the defense, who's played very well for Notre Dame all throughout the year, was not able to handle the Bearcats and weren't able to get it done and put them away. So got to give a lot of credit, like I said, to the coaching staff and also to the players on Cincinnati for winning this game and proving that they do belong in the college football playoff hunt. And I think they're there. I think they're in it. I mean, I don't know what the voters will do with this. Coming into this game is ranked number 7. I think we could probably say that they will fall right into the top 4 at this point. I think this victory gives them enough to go into the top 4. I certainly think they've earned it with the schedule that they've played. I think they deserve to be a top 4 team at this point. I mean, let's go through their schedule. They beat Miami of Ohio handily. They beat Murray State. They beat Indiana on the road. They beat Notre Dame on the road. So this is a Bearcats team that, looking forward, doesn't seem to have too many spots where they could have a hiccup. I mean, they play Temple next week. They play Central Florida. They play at Navy, at Tulane. Tulane's, played pretty well this year. Navy can always give people trouble. But other than that, they play Tulsa, South Florida, SMU, and East Carolina. This schedule is set up very nice for the Bearcats to finish it off and essentially probably just take themselves right into the finals. And they deserve it. They've been right there. They've been knocking on the door for weeks and years, and now it's their time. So if they can handle their business and get it done, I can see them going right on into the college football playoff. Joe seems to think that Coach Fickle is going to bolt. I don't know if I believe that. I think that USC will probably offer him the job. I think they'll probably talk to him, but he had job opportunities last year. He could have easily taken the Michigan State job. In fact, in my opinion, and from what I've heard, he was the number 1 candidate for the Michigan State Spartans job last year or the year before, I believe it was, that Mel Tucker ended up taking over. I think that Coach Fickle was the guy they wanted. I think they offered him the job, and I think he chose to stay at Cincinnati because he believes that he can build this program. And now he's got him going to a big-time conference. He's moving into the Power 5. They're going to the Big 12 in the next couple of years. I think he's going to stay there. And I understand that. There's more money, but there's a lot more in this world despite money. And I think Coach Fickle's the kind of guy. He's already made good money. He made good money as an assistant at Ohio State. He makes good money at Cincinnati. I think Cincinnati's going to give him a raise. I think they're going to give him more money. They just gave him an extension and a raise last year, and I think they'll give him more money. I think they'll give him an additional raise, and I don't know if they can match USC's offer, but what's the point of going out to USC and maybe going 9-3 and getting fired? That's what I see happening going out there. I mean, he doesn't have any ties to USC. This is a guy that's an Ohio guy that grew up in Ohio. He's lived in Ohio his entire life. And I just think he's going to stay. We'll see. Maybe I'm wrong, and maybe he will go to USC. Maybe Joe's right. We'll find out. But I definitely think he's proven himself as one of the top coaches in college football, and I think he's got one of the top teams in college football. So big-time game yesterday. Joe's Irish went down, and they're probably not going to end up making the college football playoff and probably shouldn't, to be honest with you. Let's talk about the Irish for a minute. I mean, this is a team that, let's be brutally honest, should have lost week 1 to Florida State, who's a team that's in a lot of turmoil right now. And that Florida State went toe-to-toe with them the entire game, and had the coach not iced his own kicker, the Florida State Seminoles would have won that game. So Notre Dame, I think, is in some trouble. I think they've still got some tough games on their schedule. I'm not 100% sold that they can win the rest of the games on their schedule. I'm a little bit nervous about what they've got going ahead. They play at Virginia Tech. They play that USC team that we were just talking about. They play North Carolina. They play Navy. They play a decent Virginia team, Georgia Tech, who's already beaten Clemson. And then they play at Stanford, who we will talk about later on the show. But Stanford already has 2 big-time wins this year, knocking off USC. And yesterday, as we'll talk about later, took down number 3, Oregon Ducks. So Notre Dame's got some problems. They've got some big-time games still left on this schedule, and I could see them potentially taking a couple more losses, especially if they don't get a lot of their issues figured out. Defense still looks pretty solid to me. 24 points to Cincinnati doesn't really ruffle my feathers too much. Scoring only 13, I think, is a bigger problem, and I think is what Brian Kelly needs to figure out. Who is your quarterback going forward? If you're moving on from Jack Cohen, then move on and put this other kid in and leave him in, because I think the 2 quarterback system, if you've got 2, the old saying is you don't have one. So we'll see what happens, but a big-time game yesterday, a big-time victory for the Cincinnati Bearcats, and kudos to them and congratulations to their fans, to their coaches, and to their players. So big-time other games as well yesterday. I want to talk a little bit about the SEC. I want to talk a little bit about the big game in Lexington, Kentucky yesterday. Wow. This is not your grandpa's Kentucky Wildcat football team. Coach Stoops has been doing a very good job there for the last several years. And yesterday, I think, was just a culmination of what's gone on in Lexington over the past couple of years. They've gotten over some big-time humps. They have improved as an overall football program. They've been putting guys into the NFL. You know, Josh Allen, the Redskins took one of their linebackers last year very early in the draft. They've got guys, going into the league. Benny Snell playing for the Steelers, and they've been playing some pretty good football. And yesterday they went toe-to-toe with the 10th ranked Florida Gators in their own stadium. A battle from the beginning to the end, and ended up getting it done. And I think this was more an indictment on the Kentucky Wildcats more so than it was the Gators. I honestly am not down on the Gators after this game and after this loss. I'm actually higher on the Kentucky Wildcats. I mean, I don't think the Gators played terrible. They played pretty solid defense, honestly. And, I know that Emory Jones wasn't maybe as electric as people would have wanted him to be, but they were playing from behind, and Emory Jones was having to throw the ball quite a bit to try and get back into the game after they went down. They were up 10. I think they were up 10-7 at halftime, but, in the second half, Kentucky took over the lead, and, then they were coming from behind. Chris Rodriguez Jr. was held to around 43 yards in the first half, but really came to play in the second half, and they were able to run the ball and really get it done. And it was a gutsy performance by the quarterback at Kentucky, Will Levis. I know he only had 87 yards and only threw the ball 17 times total, but he also ran the ball 6 times for 21 yards and pretty much just led the team and did what he had to do to get the victory in this big time matchup. So lots of credit goes to Coach Stoops, his defense, one of the top defenses in all of college football. Really showed up. But they held Emory Jones to 203 passing yards. They held him to 63 rushing yards. That was their main focus, was to key on Emory Jones and keep him contained as much as they could. And Jacob Copeland was their leading receiver with 6 catches for 59 yards. And this was just a game where Kentucky believed they could win. We've seen games in the past where Kentucky is ahead, maybe up on the Gators, but they lose the lead. And I saw it potentially happening yesterday, and they just wouldn't be denied. There was a couple opportunities there at the end where penalties played a role in the Gators. They had several false starts. I think at the end of the game, they had over 13 penalties for over 120 yards against them, that being the Gators. So that definitely played a factor. I think they had 8 false starts. That is something you cannot do when you're in an SEC game, playing a big-time SEC East opponent, somebody that's in your own side of the conference, in your own division, fighting for the Eastern Division crown. You can't false start 8 times. I mean, we'll talk to Bryant Browning a little bit later here on the show, the 12:30 hour. He's going to join us in about 15 minutes. We're going to talk to him about what that can do to an offense when you've got offensive linemen that are continually jumping before the snap and jumping off sides and false starts plaguing the team. I mean, I think that's something that really ruined the game for Florida yesterday, and it's something they've got to get cleaned up. And where does Florida go from here? I mean, I don't know, to be honest. This is something they're going to have to regroup from, because they've still got some games on their schedule that are going to be tough games. I mean, they're not out of the woods yet here, as they say in the SEC. They play Vanderbilt next week, so they should come back with an easy victory there. Then they go to Death Valley to play LSU, and then come back home to play second-ranked Georgia. So, this is not a good time for the Gators to lose another game. They'd already lost the close one against Alabama. I think everybody gave them credit for being in that game and for playing the Crimson Tide so tough. But, losing like they did yesterday and going down in Lexington to the Cats, I think is something that could potentially derail their season. And we'll see what Dan Mullen comes back with after this loss. But with 2 losses already in the SEC, they're basically out of the race. I mean, I don't see Georgia losing 2 games, especially 2 conference games, and that's pretty much going to spell the end of the Gators. So, sorry, Dan Mullen, that was a big time loss, and I gotta put some of this on the coaches. I'm sorry. I mean, these players go out there, and I understand they have to execute, but if you can't nail into these guys' heads that they can't be false starting in the fourth quarter, on 3rd and goal, that's a problem with your coaching staff. And it pained me to watch, and I'm sure it's going to pain the coaches staff and the coaches when they go back and watch the tape and see that this game slipped right through their fingers by jumping off sides 8 times. I mean, that's just absolutely ridiculous. But let's move right along and talk a little bit of Pac-12 football. Not something that we talk a ton about on this show, but I think yesterday's game warrants discussion. Big time victory for the Stanford Cardinal. Huge victory for their program, for their coach, who David Shaw's been feeling a little bit of heat the past couple seasons as things haven't been going how they like. But it seems like in the last few weeks, they've gotten things turned around and they've gotten the offense fixed. Their offense looks, I was just talking to a good buddy, James Bonneville, and we both agreed that since Tanner McKee has taken over, that it looks more like a David Shaw coached offense and more like a traditional David Shaw Stanford program. And now Stanford's 3-2. They're 2-1 in the Pac-10. They got victories over USC and Oregon. Big time victory for them yesterday. Huge win. They played them tough all day long. Finally, Oregon tied it up with a touchdown late in the fourth quarter and sent this game into overtime, or took the lead at the end, and Stanford had to score to take this game into overtime, and then got the ball first, went down and scored, and then was able to hold Oregon out of the end zone and ended up winning 31-24. And this is a big time loss for Oregon, who had already taken down the Buckeyes in Columbus, was 4-0 for the first time in a long time, I think since 2014. Coach Cristobal had this team rolling, but they were missing some guys yesterday. And I'm not making excuses for them, but Verdell, CJ Verdell, their big-time running back, was banged up, actually went out of this game. He had 17 carries for 63 yards and missed some time. But they still had Travis Dye out there who finished the game with 19 carries for 96 yards. So they were able to still run the football. And I don't think that CJ Verdell's loss, cost them this game. I think it was their defense's inability to get Stanford off the field. And that was something that we saw them be able to take care of in Columbus, and something they struggled with yesterday at times. So where do the Ducks go from here? I don't know. But, their season's not over. I think they can still potentially challenge for the Pac-12 championship. They've still got some pretty good games on their schedule that they can win. They play against Cal next week, and then they travel to UCLA the week after that. And then the rest of their schedule looks pretty good for them, honestly. So if they can take care of business at UCLA on October 23rd, my mother's birthday, then they should be good, and I think should potentially still be in the mix for the Pac-12 championship. But big loss yesterday, a huge win for the Stanford Cardinal. Got to give David Shaw and his coaching staff a lot of credit. They got their team ready to play. They had their team believing they could win, and they took care of business and got it done. So, wow. Amazing games, man. I loved watching this game from beginning to end. This was a big rivalry. If you go back through history, there's been numerous times where the Stanford Cardinal have taken down a top 3 team. In fact, I believe they've done it 6 to 7 times over the past 20 to 30 years. And that's something that a lot of teams can't say, that they've taken down a team with a top 3 ranking like that. And gotten it done in a big time situation like the Cardinals. So not a team that you really want to play when you're looking to win a championship and looking to make it to the college football playoff with a high ranking like they had. So another big time game. A couple games we want to touch on here real quick before Bryant Browning joins us to break down the Ohio State victory yesterday over Rutgers, and also talk a little Big Ten. Just want to talk a little bit about the Georgia Bulldogs. Wow, what a win. I mean, this is a big game. I mean, this is where College Game Day was at yesterday. The Georgia Bulldogs were welcoming in a team that honestly looked really good the week before, knocking off Texas A&M. And I'm talking about the Sam Pittman-led Arkansas Razorbacks. They were ranked number 8 overall in the country. They looked like one of the best teams in the country. Now, I'm not making excuses for Arkansas, but I do want to let people know that their quarterback, KJ Jefferson, did get banged up in that Texas A&M game. I'm not saying that's the reason they lost. Obviously, Georgia dominated them. But KJ Jefferson wasn't the same yesterday. When I went back and watched the tape, his biggest thing is he can get you with throwing the ball, and he can get you with running the ball. And he was not the same runner yesterday. He had 8 carries for 5 yards. And I think that's where the Arkansas offense kind of staggered, was without their hero, their big-time quarterback, two-way thrower and runner type player getting it done. That was a big blow to them. And I don't think he was essentially healthy. And I also think he hadn't seen a defense like Georgia. Georgia's the number 1 defense in the country, in my opinion. And they came to play again yesterday. I mean, this is a front that held the Arkansas Razorbacks to 75 yards rushing total throughout this game, and 37-0 domination. Pretty impressive, especially considering Georgia's quarterback didn't even play. That's almost hard to believe. Stetson Bennett came in. He only completed 7 passes all day long, but he didn't really need to do anything. All he had to do was hand the ball off. James Cook finished 12 carries, 87 yards. Zamir White had 16 carries, 68 yards, 2 touchdowns. McIntosh had over 50 yards. Kendall Milton had right around 50 yards. So they had 4 or 5 guys that had 50 yards rushing, and that makes it difficult to stop. I mean, who do you key on? Which running back are you really looking out for? I mean, all 4 of these guys can run the football, and they proved it yesterday. So kudos to Kirby Smart and the Georgia Bulldogs. That was a big-time victory. they left no doubt about that one. I mean, a lot of people were picking Arkansas to come in and win that game, and especially with the quarterback, JT Daniels, not playing for Georgia. I think some people gave Arkansas a fighter's chance, but it was not to be. And that was pretty amazing. I got to be honest, I did not think it was going to be that lopsided of a game. I thought that Georgia would probably win. I picked them to win by about 7 to 10 points. I did not pick them to win 37-0. Wow, that was pretty amazing. And we got to give Georgia their credit. We got to be thinking about them being a top 4 team now for the rest of the season, because they've proven it on big time stages against big time opponents. And I think they're looking like this might be the year of the Bulldog. If they can beat Alabama, which has been the one team they haven't really been able to take care of, they can beat the Crimson Tide. This could be the year that the Georgia Bulldogs finally bring a championship back to Athens. I mean, it's been a while. It's 1980 was the last time the Georgia Bulldogs were able to win the national championship. And a lot of people that are probably watching this show right now and walking around weren't alive the last time that happened. So I know their fans are itching for them to go out and win the big game. And they've made the college football playoff, but they have not won a national championship. So I think their first step is going to be winning the East. I think they should do that. I definitely think they're the best team in the East at this point, especially with Florida having 2 losses. There's really no one else to contend. So we'll see what happens, but I think that Georgia looks like they're in a really good position right now, especially after this victory. I mean, they're in a good spot. I think that they will I think they're going to take care of business, and I think they're going to get it done and essentially get their way right into the college football playoff. So another game we got to touch on as well is going to be the Oklahoma Boomer Sooners. Rico and I talked about last week how their fans were booing their quarterback, Spencer Rattler, and embarrassing themselves in a game that they won. And they came back out this week and played a very good Kansas State team. Let's be honest, Kansas State gave them everything they wanted. Oklahoma's not rolling people like they usually do. I think that's maybe what their fans are upset about. I don't know. They were up 13-10 at halftime, ended up scoring 24 points in the second half to only 21 by Kansas State, winning 37-31. Kansas State had their quarterback back. Skylar Thompson was back into the fold and played a really good game, 29-41, 321 yards and 3 touchdowns. This guy's a player, and Kansas State, in my opinion, I know they've lost 2 games, but they're still a pretty good football team. So a win's a win. The 6th-ranked Sooners are still undefeated, and I know their fans may not like these close ball games, but when the game's over, all that really matters is, where does that numero 1 go? Does it go in the win column or does it go in the loss column? And so far, they've all gone into the win column for the Sooners. So you got to give them credit for that and being able to get it done. I mean, I still am baffled by why and how they could be booing their team and booing their quarterback when they're undefeated and in a pretty good position right now to make it to another college football playoff, which they've been consistently playing into the past few years. And I think they're going to continue doing that with Lincoln Riley as their coach. So we'll see what happens. I've heard some rumblings. I know Joe thinks Fickle's going to USC, but I've heard some rumblings that they're trying to get in touch and talk with Lincoln Riley and potentially get him out of Boomer Sooner land and get him to USC. I don't really see him leaving either. I believe that these coaches, once they built something like this and built a program up, that they want to stay there and cultivate that program. But we'll see what happens. I mean, it's going to be an interesting college football season, and I think that's something that's in a lot of the minds of college football fans right now is, who is going to be the next coach at USC. The firing after the second game still baffles me. I'm still trying to figure out what it was they thought they were accomplishing by firing their coach, Clay Helton, in the second week of the season. That still didn't seem to really make sense to me. I was confused by it, and I don't really think it helps. I mean, obviously they're the first team that's looking for a coach, but I just never think it's a really good look to fire your coach in the middle of the season, unless there's a catastrophic game or a catastrophic event that needs to be addressed and handled. Then I can understand making a move like that. But just because they lost to Stanford, who has now beaten number 3 Oregon, that loss doesn't look that bad anymore. So I'm really confused as to why the firing happened when it did, and I'm not sure that essentially helps them in their next phase of their program, which is going out and finding a coach to get them back where they want to be, and potentially hiring someone away from another program. I mean, we'll see how it plays out, but I don't know if that helps them. So we'll see what goes down from there. But the other last game we want to touch on before we get into the Big Ten action is obviously the big matchup between Coach Saban and his former pupil, his former offensive coordinator in Lane Kiffin. A lot of people were picking Ole Miss, the Rebels, to come in and win this game yesterday. If ever they had a chance, right, it was yesterday. The Ole Miss came in ranked number 12, 3-0 overall, coming in to take on the number 1 Alabama Crimson Tide. Been tough to stop Ole Miss so far this year. No one's really had any success slowing down Matt Corral and that offense, and it's been a struggle for defenses to even get Ole Miss off the field. However, they have not played Alabama yet, so that train just keeps on rolling. In fact, Nick Saban, I got an interesting stat here, is now 24-0 against his former assistants who've taken over as head coaches and come back to play against the Alabama Crimson Tide. 24-0. And let's be honest, there's been some pretty good teams that have come in, some pretty good coaches that have come in to play against Nick Saban and take on the Crimson Tide that were formerly coaches of his. So once again, just utter domination. Brian Robinson Jr. Came out yesterday. This is a kid who I don't believe had ever rushed over 100 yards, but it wasn't because of a lack of good play or a lack of solid performance from him. He just hadn't really gotten the carries. They've been throwing the ball a lot. They've been doing a kind of running back by committee type situation. And yesterday, he was the guy that got the bulk of the carries, finished with 171 yards and 4 touchdowns. That's right. 4 touchdowns, 36 carries, 171 yards, 4 touchdowns. He kept the Ole Miss offense off the field. He kept Lane Kiffin standing over there trying to figure out ways to get his defense to make a stop. And they're just, there was no way to win when you couldn't even get your offense on the field. And I think, these high-powered offenses are great, but when your defense, can't stop the run at all, there's really no way for your offense to win it for you when they can't even get onto the field. And I think, the Ole Miss offense or the Ole Miss defense has been playing better this year, and I've actually been impressed. But as we mentioned earlier, they haven't played Alabama just yet. They haven't played the Crimson Tide, and it's a different world when you get out there. And their offensive line is unmatched. They lost 3 guys off the offensive line last year who are all playing in the NFL. And it seems like they just, plug and play and keep on rolling because it doesn't really matter what the name is. You look at the offensive linemen for Alabama the last 10 years plus during this dynasty run, and it's pretty much looked the same. I mean, they can run block, they can pass block, they can dominate whoever's in front of them. And that's the difference between winning and losing. If you have the more talented and the more dominant offensive and defensive lines like Alabama does, well, you're going to end up more often than not winning the game. And it looks to me like, the Alabama Crimson Tide and the Georgia Bulldogs are set up on a collision course right now in the SEC championship game. Now, a lot of things can happen. We're only in week 5, but at this point, it looks to me like those are the 2 best teams, not only in the SEC, but also in the country. So I'm looking forward to, seeing what else goes down in SEC play. I think that the Crimson Tide have, they've got some interesting games left on their schedule. I think next week they travel to Texas A&M, who's, I think they're still a pretty good opponent, but they're definitely have dropped off since they lost their starting quarterback and haven't been the same team. We'll see what they can do against the Tide, but they'll travel to Texas A&M. They travel to Mississippi State. They come home to play Tennessee, LSU, and then they have to play the last 2 games at home against Arkansas and on the road against Auburn. So we'll see what happens. We'll see, what kind of Alabama team we've got going on here towards the end of the season. Usually they're the team that just keeps getting better and better, and I expect them to continue to do that. So we'll have to keep watching and and keep hoping that at some point somebody can knock off Alabama. I mean, I respect Coach Saban immensely. I think he is the greatest college football coach that I have ever seen. This is a guy that, as we just mentioned, has played games against 24 of his assistants, or 24 games against his assistant coaches who have gone on to become head coaches and won every single one of them. And I think that's a testament to the man right there, that his assistant coaches have gone on to be head coaches and come back to even play him 24 different times. That tells you right there that he's set a lot of other people up for success beyond just himself. And that just goes to prove, that it all starts up at the top. And these programs that have struggled for years, some of the blue chip programs in our country that have been immense powers in years past, in the 80s and the 90s. We're not going to go down that list and talk about them, but there's several teams that haven't been able to get back to prominence and haven't been able to get back to where they once were, and that's because they haven't had the right guy at the top. And that's what Alabama was searching for years, and they finally found their man. They found a guy that had already gotten it done and won a national championship at LSU, and he, once he got to the Alabama, and once he got to the Crimson Tide, he's been able to replicate that and then some, and just continue to build on that program. And man, even Jamison Williams, a guy who played for Ohio State, had some success, essentially was a very, very fast wide receiver who was, probably the fastest guy on the Buckeyes team the last 2 years, but wasn't getting the targets that he wanted. This is a guy who was basically the 3rd, 4th, maybe 5th option at times with Ohio State, considering they got Chris Olave, Jackson Smith and Jigba, and also Garrett Wilson. It was tough and difficult for Jamison Williams to get balls, but he's thriving in that Alabama offense. This is a guy that can really take the top off the defense, and that's what he's been doing for the Crimson Tide. He had a 100-yard kickoff return last week, and this week, he was their number 1 receiver. He had 5 catches for 65 yards, averaged 13 yards a catch. But Bryce Young's been spreading the ball around, and I think that's something too that we need to recognize is that Bryce Young has stepped into the starter role for the Crimson Tide and hasn't missed a beat. This is a kid that Rico really likes, and he's mentioned how his poise has been unbelievable since he stepped on campus and became the starter. And I agree with Rico. I think this is a kid who, he's wise beyond his years. I mean, there was no drop off from last year to this year. Mac Jones did some amazing things and, won a national championship once again with the Crimson Tide. And since Bryce Young has taken over as the starter, it hasn't really looked a whole lot different to me. This is a guy that's got more scrambling ability than Mac Jones did, obviously, but he doesn't run the ball that much. When he does scramble, he's looking downfield. He's trying to find open receivers. he's keeping his eyes on the prize and doing what he can to try and help his team win. And I think that we need to all recognize that this is not the norm. This is not usually how it works. I mean, essentially, there's usually growing pains when a new quarterback takes over and becomes the starter. It typically takes them a while to get going and to get acclimated and get used to playing in the offense that they're put in. And this has not been the case for Bryce Young. He's a kid that I say kid because he's a very, he's a young guy, and he's a young man that has really stepped into his role. And man, he looks like a senior out there, in my opinion. He just, he doesn't make a ton of mistakes. He did have an interception yesterday, but the amount of times he's thrown the football, that's going to happen occasionally. But he's not hurting his team. He's more so helping his team, and he's really proven to be one of the best quarterbacks in the country. And I think he's definitely still in the Heisman race and maybe atop of it. I know that Matt Corral, the quarterback for Mississippi, was thought by many to be in the front of the race. And I don't think he hurt himself yesterday. Obviously, he was playing against the number one team in the country. He still went 21 of 29 for 213 yards and a touchdown, but just didn't get, the time of possession was dominated by the Crimson Tide. And with Brian Robinson Jr. carrying the ball 36 times for 171 yards, there wasn't a whole lot that Matt Corral could do, being that he wasn't on the field for much of the time. So kudos to the Crimson Tide. It seems like a broken record. I mean, every week we talk about them, somebody's going to go in and get them. Here's this team that's playing well. This is their year. And then they go and play the Crimson Tide. And usually the exact same thing happens. And I think that's why people were kind of shocked that Florida played them so closely a couple of weeks ago. And, we thought maybe there was some chinks in the armor, but there's not. And that was just a game where they were down in the swamp and they got Florida's best, and the Gators were able to keep it close. But since then, the tide has kept on turning, and the Gators, the Gators have not looked as good. And losing yesterday to Kentucky, that shows that Bama is still in control. And even though they may have not played their best in the second half against Florida, they're still getting better every single week, and they're still the number one team. And until you beat the best, you're not going to be the best. And I just think that they are the best team in college football right now, and they are going to be the best team in college football moving forward until somebody knocks them off. So we will see what happens. We're going to go ahead and start talking a little bit about the Big Ten. We're going to get into the Buckeyes game yesterday, as I think that was what all of us were kind of anticipating the Buckeyes to look like. Rutgers came in 3-1. Their only loss was to the team up north, who we don't really like to talk about on this show, but their name is Michigan, and they played a little bit better this year, and they took care of business in the first half against Rutgers, but Rutgers came back and essentially held them to no points in the fourth quarter and had a chance twice to come back and potentially win that game, and got stopped on consecutive fourth down plays. But, this is a Rutgers team that's much improved, and Greg Schiano was getting a lot of credit for that, and he should. He's been a guy that's coached there before. He's a guy that, had a lot of success at Rutgers, whereas a lot of people have not. They've had many coaches over the years, and many different guys come in and try and take that program to new heights. And since they've been in the Big Ten, it has not looked good for Rutgers. But they've played pretty well this year. They were 3-1, as I mentioned, and a lot of people were picking them to be, an upset special yesterday over the Buckeyes, and the Buckeyes had other plans. And this was the first time, I think, that we got to see the real CJ Stroud. I think a week of having the other two guys play last week against Akron and having to sit there and watch. I know he had a little bit of a banged up shoulder, but I think that was a good week for Coach Day to get those other kids on the field and let Kyle McCord and let Jack Miller III get out on the field and get some action. At some point we may need all three of those quarterbacks. If you recall back to 2014, the last time the Buckeyes won the national championship, well, Braxton Miller started the season as the quarterback. He got hurt in preseason in August. JT Barrett took over as the starter. JT Barrett got hurt, and eventually Cardell Jones came in and led the team to a Big Ten championship and to a national championship, essentially being the third string quarterback. So you never know when you're going to have to get very deep into your quarterback room, and that is something that has happened in Columbus before. And I think Ryan Day understands that, and that's why against Akron he got those other two guys to play. And I think with CJ Stroud sitting over there watching, I think he realized, there's some talent behind me that could potentially push me. And I think that's why competition breeds success, is that he doesn't want to lose his job. And I think that was a potential situation if he didn't start playing better, more consistently. And yesterday he did. He was phenomenal. He only threw the ball 23 times. He completed 17 of those. Out of those 17 completions, 5 of them were touchdowns. So just a lot more poise, a lot more confidence, a lot more cool and collected. Is what we saw out there from our quarterback, CJ Stroud. He just understood the offense. He understood what he was supposed to do. He got the ball into his playmaker's hands. I don't think I saw one pass that was over the receiver's head or over target, which he was doing quite a bit throughout the first several weeks. He just seemed to be overthrowing his guys and leading the guys a little bit too much. I think he was just a little tight. He was aiming the ball. He was trying too hard. We didn't see that yesterday. He was dominant. He was playing well. He was running the offense. He was basically doing everything that he was supposed to do based on what Ryan Day's game plan was. And they took care of business. And I'm not saying this to be mean, or I'm not saying this to be disrespectful to Rutgers, because I do have respect for Coach Schiano and what he's done there. But the Buckeyes could have scored 100 points yesterday. I mean, let's be honest. It was, I believe they scored 24 points in the first quarter. They scored 21 in the second quarter, and it could have continued just like that very easily. They could have kept going, and they could have scored as many points as they wanted to. But they really called the dogs off. They put the younger guys in. They put a lot of second string, third string, fourth string guys in, and it was a good chance to get going. We got Bryant Browning trying to join us here. Hang on one second. He is trying to join the show, and I think he's having a little bit of trouble here. Not seeing him. Yep, he's in the. I think we got him. There he is.
Hey.
What's up, Bryant? How you doing, man?
I'm doing all right. How you?
I'm doing real good. I was just getting into the Big Ten action. I was just actually starting to talk a little bit about the Buckeyes. My co-host, Rico McCoy, who played some good football himself.
Yeah.
I was with him yesterday. We were up in Dayton. He coaches down at Allen University, and they were playing Central State
Okay.
yesterday at McPherson Stadium, and their bus broke down on the way home.
Oh, wow.
So that's why it's me. That's why it's just me today.
One of my good friends actually is play high school football when went to Ohio State. He's a defensive coordinator at Central State.
Oh, really?
Yeah, Curtis Terry. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Did he go to Glenville?
Yep.
Okay. Well, I know all about Glenville, man. I used to work in the sports technology business. I sold the headsets that the coaches wear on the sideline. So I know all about high school football in Ohio, and I certainly know about Glenville up there. That's a pretty big time program you came from.
Yeah, definitely.
So anyway, we were talking about the Buckeyes before you jumped on, and we were discussing how, some people thought that, Rutgers had a pretty good chance to knock us off. And, they were 3-1, and Schiano's had success at Rutgers before, but it looked to me like the quarterback finally calmed down. It looks like they made some changes on defense, and it looked like they put together their first complete game. What were your thoughts on the victory over Rutgers?
Yeah, Nathan, I agree. Going into the game, I thought Rutgers would put up a pretty tough fight. They came off a close loss to Michigan. I think Michigan is playing pretty good ball this year. Actually, they held Michigan scoreless in the second half. They shut them out as then, tried to claw their way back into it. So going into it, I thought, this would be a big game. I thought Rutgers would come ready to play with, they had Ohio State coming out to them, so they'd be ready to go. But obviously, like you stated, Ohio State, they played a complete game. Started off early with the defense getting a stop. Schiano tried a fake punt, which I thought was kind of it was a questionable call, especially early on in the game. But obviously, we was prepared for that. We got the stop. And then 2 plays later, Trayvon Henderson, 44 yards for a touchdown untouched. So I think that really just kind of set the tone for the day. Getting off to a fast start. Defense was clicking, got an early pick 6 from Denzel Burke. So from there, they just kind of rolled. And, so they kind of, like you say, played a complete game on both sides of the ball.
Yeah, I agree with you 100%. And one thing that you touched on there that I want to expand upon is that running back, Trayvon Henderson. We did a college football preview show on here, and I discussed how I thought he was going to be the breakout player just because I saw a lot of tape on him coming out of Virginia, and I was really impressed. And when I saw him get in the game early in the year, even in that first Minnesota game, I was like, we got some good running backs at Ohio State, and we always have, but this kid, there's something different. And it seems like he has just a different gear, in my opinion, where, if he gets any type of hole, he may not stop because he's got a different type of level of speed that other players don't have. What's your thoughts on him so far and the way he's been running the ball?
Yeah, like you say, it's been very exciting. Obviously, at Ohio State, you have a lot of great running backs, right, that come in. But I feel like it's rare that you see a guy that's so young that's this explosive, right? Like you say, he gets a lane, he gets the ball, and if he has space, he has the speed and the strength as a true freshman, to take it all the way. I feel like, obviously, big run early. Like I said, the one he wasn't even touched, so he just kind of ran straight and scored a touchdown. So testament to the offensive line there. But the game against Tulsa, when he had essentially his breakout performance, when he broke the rookie rushing record of Archie Griffin, you saw some very strong runs. Like obviously he had the speed, the vision to get to the hole and kind of bust out. But in the open field, he's like throwing defenders off him and holding guys off while he's continuing to go on and finishes in the end zone. So I feel like that's very impressive for a young player. A lot of times, you don't have that, let's say, the strength. When we're getting in the open field as a young guy, you kind of see, guys a little bit, maybe a little bit more frailer in the upper body or lower body. So once contact kind of comes, they kind of, they have the speed, but, when contact kind of comes, you kind of can see them going down. But with him, he's a home run guy. He's, like I say, hold guys off, really strong with the ball, and he has a niche for the big play. That's what I like to say. So he's scoring touchdowns. So excited to see. Definitely going to be a household name here. So,
Yeah, no, I agree, and he's been very impressive. But as you mentioned, it all starts up front, and that's you know from being there yourself and playing, having such a great career like you did. The offensive line is what is the cog that makes the whole machine go. And this Paris Johnson, who came from Cincinnati, played at St. Xavier, and transferred to Princeton, was projected to be a tackle, but has transitioned to guard. And honestly, I wasn't sure about that move, but the coaches obviously know what they're doing. And I think with Mumford and him playing guard, it's really, really changed the dynamic of this offensive line. Talk to me a little bit about what you've seen from him and what you think about the offensive line as a unit so far.
Yeah, so like you say, for Paris Johnson to make that transition, because when you look at him, he's a tall, lengthy type of guy. So you expect him to be more of a fit the offensive tackle mode. But that just kind of goes to him being just a great football player, right? Yeah. Obviously we had older guys at the tackle position, guys that have been there before him. So for himself, he figured, hey, if I want to play, this is what I need to do, because it's not like he got our tackles are some scrubs. We got really good offensive tackles. Yeah. So in his mind, he changed he changed up things. He was able to get into that guard position, and he's playing really well. The offensive line in general is playing, to me, they're definitely the strength of the team. As I watch them compared to, watching other good teams, they're definitely one of the best offensive lines in the country. Those guys, they're just doing a fantastic job. Week by week, you're seeing them lock up with guys. They're getting their assignments. It looks like they're doing a great job when it comes to tracking blitzes and who's their man and who's their guy, and they're getting guys and they're not getting. Essentially, it's been there's far and few between those guys getting physically beat. Maybe something happens with someone missed or something of that sort, but once they kind of get their guy, they're pretty locked on. So that's always exciting to see. Like I say, Paris Johnson, he is a good player. He's going to be a great player. Maybe next year, maybe some guys go on and he could get out to that tackle position that we probably won't going to see him at in the future. But just a testament to his work habit, him coming in, seeing what the team needed, making that change on himself, and then getting himself in the best position and kind of capitalize there. So overall, I feel like offensive liners, they're just dominating guys. They really are. They're really dominating guys, and excited to see them to continue on into the Big Ten season here.
Yeah, definitely. I thought yesterday was utter domination, and I was talking a little bit before you came on how there's no telling how many points they could have kept. If they would have kept all the starters in and kept running the same play calling they were doing, they weren't going to be stopped, and there was no telling how many points there could have been scored there. So I do think it was a good showing for them, and I think it's a testament to this coaching staff. Yeah. There was some questions a couple weeks ago or a week ago when obviously we had the incident with the linebacker Pope, who quit the team at halftime there, and that was unfortunate, but people were making a big deal out of that. But I kind of have looked at different parts of the team when people have questioned their togetherness in the locker room. I look at guys like Paris Johnson. I look at guys like DeMario McCall, who essentially was originally a running back, and then he switched to receiver, and now he's playing corner. And then you got guys like Steele Chambers, who was a running back and is now playing linebacker and doing a heck of a job playing linebacker. So there's three big guys that I just named: McCall, Johnson, Chambers, who all have switched positions and have done whatever they could do to get on the field and help this team. And I think that's more indicative of how this locker room is operating as opposed to that one incident. What do you think about that?
Yeah, agree. And another person to throw on that list is Mumford, right? Mumford was the starting left tackle for 2 seasons.
Good point.
And just due to other guys stepping up, it's kind of this fit for him to kind of go into left guard and just to make the team better. So, like you said, I think the incident with Pope was a isolated incident. Obviously, you feel for the kid. I guess in his head, he felt like he should have been playing more. And then obviously the incident takes place after him not being able to go on the field for a play or a possession or something of the sorts. So, it's tough for him. Hopefully he bounces back and he gets his head back into it. And obviously, it was a blow up moment. Obviously, we haven't essentially heard Pope doing things like this in the past, but for a reason that day it kind of just went really bad for him. But like you say, it's a testament to the coaches and the staff. I mean, at Ohio State, everyone has very high expectations, right? Every year, it's essentially almost championship or bust. Now with the playoff system, it's get to the playoffs at least. That's the bare minimum. At least get to the playoffs, win the Big Ten. So the players, they understand that. Every year, you set goals for the season on what you want to do and what things you want to accomplish. And everyone knows, hey, this is Ohio State. So, we want to, it's things every season you want to do. You obviously want to win your games. You definitely want to beat Michigan and, you want to be a national championship or be a national champion. So those are the goals every year for Ohio State. So essentially, however that plays for the players, to be the best team, I might need to be the change. To be the best player I could be, I might need to make a change. And you see guys are buying into it. And that's, like you say, it's a testament to the coaching, it's a testament to the culture that these guys understand that it's not just about me. It's about, OSU, Ohio State, the Ohio State, winning games and having a chance to be national champions at the end of the year.
Yeah, and I couldn't agree with you more. And I think that, there is a lot of pressure on these kids, man. I mean, that's just the last point on the linebacker there that quit. I mean, the way things are now today is you make one mistake and everybody's got a camera and everybody, it's all on the internet and it's so blown up. And so I do wish the best for him. You got to look forward. He can't change anything that's happened, but he definitely, can get somewhere else and fit in. Maybe a change of scenery is the best thing for him, and he can still have a good career. So that's what I hope for him. But, the thing with Ohio State is, like you mentioned, people want you to win every single game, and people don't understand how hard that is and the amount of pressure that is. And it looked to me like, you never want to lose. But I feel like that Oregon loss helped us in a way. I feel like it took a little bit of the pressure off us in the sense that, hey, we lost a game already, but we still got goals. We've still got things that we can take care of. And I feel like they played a little bit looser yesterday at Rutgers.
Yeah, I will agree to that. Like you say, an early loss in the season, obviously you don't want to have them, but at the same time, it kind of gets you going, right? Kind of turns the light on, like, hey, maybe things are not as going to be as easy as we thought these things were going to be. Maybe, if you had in your head that people were going to fear Ohio State and just because you came out with the silver bullet helmets on, guys is going to lay down for you. So it kind of wakes you up, right? That, hey, essentially the offense is not going to be able to score 100 points. The defense is not going to be able to keep everybody to the zero. So you have to do your job if you expect to win these games. And, from playing at Ohio State, we know that essentially, like I said, every team has goals. And if you're a Big Ten or if you got Ohio State on the schedule, it's a game that you have start, right? You're going to do a little bit more. Your team's going to be a little bit more fired up to get prepared to try to beat Ohio State. And, the loss to Oregon, obviously it sucked. They lost. Obviously, they lost last night to Stanford. I'm sure them being Ohio State kind of put that target on their back out in the Pac-10. So they end up taking a loss to Stanford. So it kind of, as Ohio State, you're expected to win these games. There's a lot of pressure on you. So you lose one. Now instead of you being kind of that target, now you're kind of feeling that underdog type of feeling. I think CJ Stroud kind of hit on that yesterday in his post-game interview. Like, hey, lots of people are counting us out now. Obviously, he didn't say this, but the defense hasn't been performing. There's questions about my performance. As in, here we go. We go out here and we have a big win against Rutgers, and now I think they're primed to make a big run in the Big Ten and hopefully can make it to that Big Ten championship game. And hopefully Iowa stays undefeated. We catch them there, and then we have a big clash for the Big Ten championship. So I think the whole season is still in front of us. There's obviously a lot that could happen. So we still all those goals that set before the season, they're still very attainable, and it's time to perform.
Yeah, no, I agree. And I know we're up against it here, but I just wanted to touch on the rest of the Big Ten for a second with you. I don't like to mention the team up north, but we probably have to just because they are I mean, playing a little bit better, I guess. I don't like to give them any credit because I hate them. And I hate their coach, and I hate everything about them. But, they're undefeated, and they did win yesterday. But, Wisconsin's struggling.
Yeah.
And, to be honest, I haven't seen enough out of them yet to really feel like they're back. And so I just want to get your feelings. I mean, Iowa looked pretty good on Friday night against a 4-0 Maryland team. And I know it's Maryland, but they were 4-0. So I feel like that was a pretty big victory. And then Penn State took care of business against Indiana. And then Michigan State is still undefeated. So give me your feelings on those teams, those 4 teams, and just the Big Ten picture as you see it.
Yeah, so the way I see it is that essentially we're getting a lot better football from our good teams. Last year, obviously, we had, it was a COVID season last year. And what I used to say is when I watched Penn State and Michigan play, it literally looked like they just didn't practice enough to be themselves. Like they, things got shut down with camp and things of the nature was kind of going on. So when they played, it was just like, listen, a Michigan team coached by Harbaugh is going to look like this. A team coached by James Franklin is going to look like this. A team coached by Mel Tucker at Michigan State is going to look like this. And they just didn't look like that at all. So that where it really came down to me, like these guys just, due to all the shakeups that they never really got to be their normal selves. So this year, they're back to playing big football. Like I say, Coach Tucker, I believe this is his second year for Michigan State. He's kind of setting his culture up there, and you see guys are buying into it. At the big wins, you see the celebrations in the locker room. Everybody is kind of gelling together to build that culture there. And I think about Penn State, they're back to their normal ways, right? Their defense is flying around. They have exotic blitzes that they're running. They're being very disruptive. I think they had a shutout against Indiana last night. So it shows you that, they're back to their ways of, flying around, being disruptive, and having an offense that could kind of, find ways to make big plays here and there and put points on the board. When you look at Michigan, they're back to being essentially when it comes to Michigan, I feel like with Coach Harbaugh, usually they're not very explosive, but they are very sound, right? You have a very sound defense. You're going to have guys that's in the right place. If someone needs to set the edge, you want to see a guy over there supposed to set the edge. If it's a deep throw, you're going to see 2 guys up there competing to try to knock that ball down. So that's what you see from Michigan. You're back to seeing them being sound. Guys are in the right places. When it comes to their offense, they're trying to run the ball, establish the run early, kind of get some dominance there, and then kind of, hit you with some plays with their quarterback play from there. So I think guys are kind of getting back to, where they're used to be when it comes to those 3 teams. I feel like with Iowa, they're always kind of building up for a big year, right? So they, every 3 or 4, Iowa has this, you're always decent, they're always playing really good football, but every 3 or 4, they get a team that's kind of special, right? And they kind of win a bunch of games. And obviously they had some big wins earlier this year against Iowa State, other big wins that they had. And just kind of, going up that pace. And when you watch them, that's an Iowa team, right? They're very sound. They got guys that, key guys that make the plays for them, and you're going to see them every Saturday making those plays. And then on offense, they're going to have a very good offensive line play, very structured up front. They're going to protect the football, and they're going to do the little things to win the game. They're not going to beat themselves when it comes to Iowa. So that's what we're seeing. I think the Big Ten is definitely back. They're having a very strong season. But I feel like Ohio State's going to end up on top. I feel like everybody's getting ranked up there, and I love it. It's great. I hope my thought is I always hope when we play a team that they're undefeated, they have the best season possible. So when Ohio State beat them, we beat them at their best, and we can kind of keep climbing up the ranks. And then hopefully, like I say, once again, claw back into it to make to get all of those attainable goals more or less for the season and playoffs and national championships and Big Tens and all that kind of stuff. So.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with you. And I feel like last year, that the Big Ten season was canceled. And then all of a sudden, they revoted or changed the whatever it was. All of a sudden they were playing again. And I felt like Ohio State kind of led the charge on that. Justin Fields and company and some of his buddies, were really instrumental in getting the season to come back. And I felt like Ohio State was maybe the one team that kept practicing throughout that. Yeah. And some of those other teams, it looked like you said, maybe they didn't. and they had some rough seasons, but they're still good football teams, and they're proving it. And I agree with you too. I think that the better they play, the better for us, because each win that we get, the Buckeyes, that is, the better off they'll look going into the committee. But we've got some tough games still. The Buckeyes still have some tests coming up. We play Rutgers coming next week, and then go to
Maryland,
and then we play against Penn State. So, they'll have some chances to prove themselves. And I think honestly that Penn State game is the one that I've kind of got circled on my calendar right now. Is they're looking pretty tough, and I don't know what you think, but I think Penn State's looking pretty solid so far.
Yeah, I believe so. Like I say, they're definitely back. When I watched them play, who did they beat? Was that Auburn? Auburn. They played Auburn. And I watched them watch like the last half of that game and saw them play. And obviously Auburn has a very experienced quarterback in Bo Nix. They had a big win last night at LSU, which is always tough to do. But against Penn State, Penn State was the better team. They won the game, and they were the better team. So when you watch them play, you saw Penn State with their exotic looks, flying around, making plays, getting guys down, just caught wreaking havoc. And then on offense, they was able to control things. They got an experienced quarterback there as well, who's known for making plays and been doing so for a couple of years now. So it's definitely going to be the game for us. If we want to attain those goals, like I say, obviously you can't, in the Big Ten, you can't have 2 losses and think you're going to make the playoffs. So we obviously have to win the rest of our games. And I think that's the game for essentially the first game this season that is really going to test who we are, right? So obviously we lost the Oregon game, and we kind of never really looked like defensively we never really was in it, right? We was Oregon really had their way, especially in the second half of that game. Never really got that big stop we needed to kind of give our offense a chance to kind of get that game. So that's going to be the game that they're really tested. We know Penn State going to have some great wide receivers. They got a quarterback that's experienced. So it's going to be time for those guys. Either they're going to make those plays in that game, make those plays to make them, the household name that people are known around Columbus and the Buckeye fans we know, or, they're not going to make those plays and we're going to be looking like, okay, who else do we have? Who do we recruit, bring in that we can kind of fit in those positions? The Penn State game always comes down to like this. Like either big people make big plays and stand up, or you don't make those plays and you kind of stand out and kind of go on from there. So it's definitely going to be a huge one. Obviously we got to get there first, right? Take care of Maryland. I think we got Indiana between there. Take care of those games and get to that point. And same thing for them. They had to get to that point. It'll be huge for them to win their games to get to that point so we can have that clash. But it's definitely going to be a big one for us.
Yeah. No, I agree.
I always bet with Ohio State. So I think we'll do it.
No. Me too, man. Me too. I got faith in my squad, and I got faith in our players and our coaches. But I got even more faith after watching that game yesterday. It just looked like they figured some things out. I feel like there's guys that understand what they're doing now on defense. The Rocket, number 14. The guy who's been playing safety and also he's been playing safety and some linebacker, and he's been flying around making plays. I feel like the secondary, those young kids, one of them had the pick 6 yesterday, and the secondary's been playing better. And then that defensive line's just going to keep getting better too with Garrett Haskell and the defensive end Sawyer and JPT. I feel like they're going to keep getting better. So I'm very, very positive as we move forward. But hopefully you can come back and talk to us and get to meet Rico next time. Break down some football. I know you're a busy guy, but hopefully you can come back and talk to us at some point and give us a little bit more of your Big Ten knowledge.
Oh yeah, no problem. Thanks for having me on. First off, sorry for the tardiness. Literally, I've been sitting here for like since like 12:25, and I never scrolled down to see the button.
You're good, man. You're good.
It was
all good. I'm just glad
red, though. When I looked at it, it red said you're entering a live studio. You could join at any time. So I'm thinking, okay, I could join at any time. And then sure enough, I had one more button to hit.
No, you're good, man. I'm just glad you reached out because I was like, where's he at? And then I saw you sitting back there. So it was all good, man. But we'd love to have you back on. I've been listening to you. I heard you on the Tim May podcast. You did a great job, and I caught you on the Spectrum News 1. And then from what I hear, you got some barbecue going on in Columbus too, right?
Once next time you guys are in Columbus, you got to check us out. The Pit Barbecue Grill. We have 3 locations in the Columbus area. So we're open basically any day people would travel. So, so next time you're in Columbus and the area, definitely check us out and Pit Barbecue Grill. I'm biased, but everything is really good. Everything's made from scratch. So come check us out.
All right, man. That sounds great. I'll send everybody your way and we'll come check you out next time we're in Ohio. Okay.
All right.
All right, Brian. Thanks so much for joining us, and come back and talk to us in a couple of weeks, and we'll hopefully have a couple more wins under our belt, and we can break down the Buckeyes a little bit further.
All right, Nathan. Thanks.
All right, man. Have a good one. Appreciate you.
You too.
All right, that was Bryant Browning, former offensive lineman, 3-year starter, captain of the Buckeyes, played in the NFL. As you heard, he now covers the Buckeyes and does the post-game show for Spectrum News 1. Also, is an entrepreneur and has a pit barbecue in Columbus, 3 locations, as he mentioned. So get out there, try his barbecue. And man, what a lot that he brought to the table. I'm really glad that he was able to jump on with us and get us some Big Ten knowledge. We also need to acknowledge the University of Tennessee Volunteers were able to get a victory yesterday in a big way. Scoring over 60 points against Missouri. Unbelievable game. I know a lot of the Tennessee fans want to put their 3rd string quarterback in, but I think the coaches know what they're doing. And I think that was proven yesterday as Herndon Hooker, the quarterback transfer from Virginia Tech, really managed the game well, ran the ball well, threw the ball well, had 3 touchdown passes, also ran, like I said, for a number of yards, and kept the chains moving all day long and scored 60 points. So good for them. I'm happy that they were able to get that victory. And I think Coach Heupel deserves some respect and deserves some credit for what he's done, considering he basically had to come into Knoxville here and pick the pieces up. And based on the pieces that he was given, he's doing a really good job so far this season. So kudos to Coach Heupel and the Volunteers for getting a big victory yesterday, beating a SEC team and scoring 60 points in that victory against Missouri. So big time football, week 5. I can't believe it's week 5 already. Hopefully Rico made it back to the school and that everybody's okay. Sorry they had the breakdown there, but I enjoyed immensely getting a chance to watch him coach yesterday. Rico did a great job. The team did a great job. They had a big victory versus Central State Marauders in Wilberforce, Ohio. Encourage everybody to go and check that game out in case you missed it. It was a heck of a game going back and forth for a while, but the Rico McCoy-led defense really stepped up in the second half and held the Marauders to only 6 second half points. So kudos to the Allen University Yellow Jackets. Their big victory yesterday, and what a great weekend of college football. We had some good games Friday night, some huge games Saturday. While I was in Ohio, I got to see my nephew Aiden Schmidt, who plays for the Sylvania Northview Wildcats. He went for over 100 yards and a touchdown, and has the team undefeated in conference play. So shout out to Aiden Schmidt up in Northview. I love you, buddy. I enjoyed getting to see you play, and I hope we get to talk to you later on and talk to you next year when you're playing college football, because this kid is ready to go. So everybody, thank you so much. This is Man Coverage with Knoxville Nate and Rico McCoy, who is not here today, but we'll be back next week. We'll be back next week on Sunday right here on Twitter at @man_coverage. Also on our Facebook page, Man Coverage, look it up. And we have a YouTube channel too, which just look up Man Coverage Knoxville Nate or Man Coverage Rico McCoy, and you will find it. Subscribe to that channel, like us on Twitter, and definitely come back and join us next Sunday at 11 a.m. right here. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. We thank our special guest, Bryant Browning, Ohio State former offensive lineman, former NFL player, entrepreneur, Spectrum News 1 post-game show host. Everything that you can do, Bryant Browning has done, and he did a great job today on the show. So I really appreciate him joining me and coming on Man Coverage. Have a great rest of the weekend, and thanks to everybody for tuning in.